Previously on Legends of Aelos. Sat at a large banquet table with a royal feast laid out before them, the fated five sit and dine with the king, flanked by his family and hand. King Cantonius addresses the party with commendation and welcome for what they have accomplished thus far, the rescue of his daughter and hand being amongst them, of course. Despite the welcoming disposition, however, there is still a tension amongst some of the party members, Karun occupied in his mind about the visit from the raven-faced man, Briar and her scrutinization of what the temple will do, or better put, won't, for Asher and his beloved Eden, and Dominicus, who, after requesting assistance for Lady Alilia and her house from the ravages of war, finally comes face to face with Grandmaster Kazrak after producing the medallion, much to the veiled shock of the king himself. Kazrak excuses himself and the king for a moment, during which the party continues their conversation with the queen and learns a bit more about the lineage of the royal family and hers as well. They speak of how the queen's father will be in for a summit of his Windian lords to determine their next steps in the war against King Vath and Zahath. Before long, Kazrak and the king return, and Kazrak beckons Dom to join him in the study. Now with some privacy, Dom brings the weight of his questions to bear. Kazrak attempts to placate Dom's inquiry with a false story, but Dominicus can see there is something hidden and presses Kazrak for the truth. Kazrak moves to secure the study and prepares Dom for the ramifications of knowing the truth. Dominicus insists that he know the truth of his birth, and Kazrak reveals that he is in fact the illegitimate son of Prince Cantonius, now King of Eswind, and Princess Elizabeth, now Queen of Zahath. With the gravity of what that implies, Dom comes to realize the impact this information would have across the continent whole, as well as the potential risk to life this would expose Dominicus and his friends to, on top of what else already seeks the demise of the five. Kazrak tells Dom that he can remove the knowledge if he so desires. However, the effects would be absolutely permanent. And so despite the risks, Dom elects to maintain the knowledge, not only as it brings a proper wholeness to himself, but also because he cannot deny the potential destiny, if not to rule, then to unite the kingdoms and bring an end to the war and strife, even if it will be some time before that can be seen to fruition. Before Dom returns to the party, Kazrak summons the king to the study, and even if briefly, a father meets a son for the first time. During this time, Briar and Martisan have excused themselves along with Coel under the guise of going to freshen up in the powder room, when in actuality, the goal is to infiltrate the Temple of Light and snoop on the interaction between Asher Asterion and the clergy there. Eventually, they make their way to the balcony, and inevitably, they come across the familiar voices of Asher Asterion speaking with his aunt, Headmother Catherine. She denies the ability to resurrect Eden, on unfounded claims of it not working on those of her bloodline. Asher knows that this is a lie, and he vocalizes his suspicions that the temple planted the Baylor and Goldmund that took Eden's life, based upon the fact that it possessed a radiant sword. Headmother Catherine sloughs off the allegations and presents the situation as an opportunity for Asher to start anew and to return to the favor of the temple. But Asher rebukes her along with the church, exiting the temple, cradling the body of his beloved Eden. Though Briar, and Martisan for that matter, wanted nothing more than to exacted vigilante's justice upon the headmother and her cronies, Coel assures that it would not be the way to resolve this. And so Briar simply continues to add to her journaled accountings of the atrocities of the Temple of Light before they return to the dining hall in the keep. Eventually, the royal family must retire to other matters, and so the five return to their rooms at the tavern and discuss the morning's events. Dom's lineage is not a topic of their discussion, considering the added risk for each member that knew at this point. But they do discuss a certain glistening chalice that the king had, one that seems all too likely to be the one sought by Mother Raven. Before the conversation comes to a natural segue, though, the party is interrupted by incessant knocking at the door. a paladin of the temple by the name of Brother Gawain, announces that he is seeking the fated five, Asher transforms himself into a small and inconspicuous spider as Briar wraps herself and Dom in an invisible veil with a spell. Now with Corun and Rowan as the only visible party members, they open the door and address the paladins. Brother Gawain states that he is to escort the five to the temple, though he will happily escort just the two of them if they are the only ones present at the time. Though inwardly they might have their apprehensions and suspicions, outwardly they agree to accompany the paladins, and they are escorted to the temple. Upon arriving, Rowan and Corun are greeted by Headmother Catherine, who invites Corun into her offices to speak, to which Corun agrees, despite his apprehensions around her. Inside, and separated from the group, Corun is introduced to Inquisitor Jothrand, proceeds to ply his trade against Corun. As with any inquisition, the questioning begins relatively tame, then descends to more pointed inquiries into the magical potentials of members of the party. And despite the best efforts of Corun, by the end he is impressed that they did not inquire, for they already knew what magic potentials he, Briar, and Asher possessed, powers deemed heretical by the Church. Though it was not until the end that the more accusatory statements were made, Corun suspected better than to feel obliged to remain at the temple at the Inquisitor's behest, the logic being that he must confer with his friends and companions before making any commitments, however brief they might seemingly be. They let Corun go along his way without questioning Rowan, as Corun proceeds to telepathically inform the group of the scrutinous eye that the temple has cast upon the fated five. And it is from here we shall continue the story of the Legends of Aelos.